Admiral Jiho stood in the center of the great chamber, his hands clasped behind his back. The room was massive, built to hold representatives from 12 different alien species. Each species had their own section, elevated on platforms that rose higher than where Jiho stood. They looked down at him like judges passing sentence on a criminal. The ceiling was so high that Jiho could barely see it. Strange lights floated in the air, casting shadows that made the alien faces look even more unusual. Some of the aliens had multiple eyes. Others had skin that changed colors. A few didn't even have faces that Jiho could recognize as faces. Jiho was not alone. Behind him stood Captain Dae-hyun, a military officer who had served with him for 20 years. Next to Dae-hyun was Ambassador Yura, the human representative who had tried so hard to make peace with the Council. In the observation area above, hundreds of humans watched through transparent walls. Among them was Hana, a scientist who had worked with alien researchers for most of her adult life. The Council leader, a being that looked like a floating mass of geometric shapes, spoke. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. The words were translated into Korean by the small device in Jiho's ear. Humanity has been observed for 200 years, the Council leader said. In that time, you have shown patterns that concern us greatly. Jiho said nothing. He had been told to remain silent unless asked a direct question. Another council member spoke. This one resembled a tree with too many branches. You expand too quickly. You claim worlds without proper authorization. You build colonies in systems that were marked for preservation. A third voice joined, this one sounding like wind through metal tubes. You refuse to follow established protocols. When we tell you to use approved technology, you create your own. When we tell you to wait, you move forward anyway. Dae-hyun's jaw tightened. Jiho could feel the anger radiating from his friend. But both men remained still. Ambassador Yura stepped forward. May I speak? She asked. The council leader's geometric shapes rotated slowly. You may. We have contributed much to this council, Yura said. Her voice was calm and professional, but Jiho knew her well enough to hear the strain beneath. Human medical technology has saved millions of lives across dozens of species. Our engineers have improved transportation systems throughout council space. Our diplomats have negotiated peaceful resolutions to conflicts that had lasted for centuries. Your contributions are noted, the council leader said. They do not change the fundamental problem. What problem? Yura asked. That we are different from you? The chamber filled with sounds. Some aliens made clicking noises. Others hummed at frequencies that made Jiho's teeth ache. He understood these were expressions of disapproval. You are too emotional, said an alien that looked like it was made of liquid metal. You make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. This makes you unpredictable. Unpredictability creates chaos. You are too aggressive, added another. You see every challenge as something to overcome rather than accept. You push boundaries that were established for good reasons. Jiho had heard enough. May I speak? He asked. The council leader's shape stopped rotating. Speak, Admiral. You call us aggressive because we defend ourselves when attacked. You call us emotional because we care about our people. You call us unpredictable because we adapt to new situations, instead of following old rules. Jiho took a step forward. But let me ask you this. When was the last time any of your species discovered something new? When was the last time you faced a problem you didn't already have an ancient solution for? The chamber went silent. You are comfortable, Jiho continued. You have been the rulers of this galaxy for so long that you have forgotten what it means to struggle. You have forgotten what it means to grow. We remind you of something you don't like. That the universe doesn't care about your rules. That survival sometimes requires breaking those rules. This is exactly why you must leave, the council leader said. Its voice was colder now. You do not respect the order we have maintained for millions of years. You do not understand your place. Our place? Dae-hyun couldn't help himself. You mean beneath you? More disapproving sounds filled the chamber. Ambassador Yura held up a hand, trying to calm the situation. Please. We can find a compromise. Give us time to. The decision is made, The council leader interrupted. Humanity is hereby banished from council space. You have 30 standard cycles to remove all your people, ships, and structures from any system within council territory. After that deadline, any human presence will be considered an act of war. Up in the observation area, Hana pressed her hand against the transparent wall. She watched her colleagues, aliens she had worked with for years, turn away from her. They wouldn't meet her eyes. One of them, a researcher she had considered a friend, mouthed the words, "I'm sorry," before leaving. Jiho looked at each council member in turn. "This is a mistake," he said quietly. "You think you're removing a problem, but you're losing something valuable. One day, you'll realize that." "We have made our judgment," the council leader said. Dismissed. As the human delegation left the chamber, Jiho could feel thousands of alien eyes watching them. Some looked satisfied. Others looked uncertain. A few even looked sad, but none spoke up in humanity's defense. The walk back to the human section of the station took 30 minutes. Along the way, they passed aliens who had been friendly just days before. Now those same beings looked away or crossed to the other side of the corridor. In the human embassy, chaos had already begun. People rushed back and forth, organizing evacuation plans. Ships were being recalled from distant outposts. Families were being notified that they had to leave their homes. Daehyun slammed his fist against a wall. 200 years of cooperation, and they throw us out like garbage. They're afraid, Yura said softly. Afraid of change. Afraid of what they don't understand. Jiho walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Beyond the council's territory lay unexplored space. Dark regions that the council species feared to enter. Places where the old rules didn't apply. "Maybe this is for the best," Jiho said. Daehyun stared at him. "How can you say that?" "Because they've been holding us back," Jiho replied. "We've been so focused on fitting into their system that we've limited ourselves. Out there," he gestured to the dark space beyond, "we can be what we truly are." Hana entered the embassy, her eyes red from crying. They've canceled all joint research projects. 30 years of work, just gone. Jiho turned to face his people. "Then we'll do our own research. We'll build our own projects. We'll create something better." "You really think we can survive out there alone?" someone asked. Jiho smiled, though there was no humor in it. "Humanity has always survived. We've adapted to every challenge we've ever faced. This will be no different." Over the next 30 cycles, humanity gathered everything it had built in council space. Ships formed massive convoys. Entire space stations were dismantled and packed for transport. Millions of people said goodbye to the only homes they had ever known. On the final day, Jiho sent one last message to the council. It was brief and simple. "You'll regret this." Then humanity's fleet turned away from the bright, orderly systems of council space. They pointed their ships toward the darkness beyond, toward the unknown, toward freedom. Behind them, the council watched the last human ship disappear from their sensors. They felt satisfied. The problem had been solved. Order would return. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. 300 years had passed since the humans left. The council had almost forgotten about them. Life had returned to what the council members called normal. The old routines were followed. The ancient traditions were respected. Everything was peaceful and orderly, just as it had been for millions of years before humanity arrived. Taemin worked in the council archives, a massive library that held the recorded history of the galaxy. He was a historian, trained in the old ways of his people. His job was to maintain the records and study the patterns of the past. Lately, he had noticed something strange in those patterns. He sat in his small office, surrounded by data displays that floated in the air. Each display showed graphs and numbers that tracked different aspects of council civilization. Taemin had been staring at these displays for 3 days straight, barely sleeping. "It doesn't make sense," he muttered to himself. His assistant, a younger member of his species, entered the office. "What doesn't make sense?" Taemin gestured at the displays. "Look at these technological advancement rates. For millions of years, we progressed at a steady pace. Slow, but steady. Then, 200 years before the humans arrived, something changed. The rate increased significantly. "I don't understand the problem," his assistant said. "The increase matches the period when we first made contact with humanity. They were still primitive then, not part of the council yet. But even their questions, their different way of thinking, it pushed us to innovate." Taman pulled up another display. "Now look at what happened after they left. The advancement rate has dropped to almost zero. Maybe we've simply reached a plateau of development," his assistant suggested. "Maybe we've learned everything there is to learn." Taman shook his head. "The universe is infinite. There's always more to learn. Unless..." He trailed off, a troubling thought forming in his mind. Unless what? Unless we've become too comfortable, too satisfied with what we already know. His assistant looked uncomfortable. "That sounds like something a human would say." "Maybe the humans were right about some things," Taman said quietly. Across the council territories, Nari faced a different problem. She was a trade administrator, responsible for managing the flow of goods between different council worlds. The job had become increasingly difficult over the past century. She stood in the central trade hub, watching ships come and go through the massive windows. There were fewer ships than there used to be. The routes were less efficient. Several colonies had reported shortages of basic supplies. Her supervisor approached, looking tired. "We've lost another trade route. The merchants say it's not profitable anymore." Nari pulled up a holographic map showing all the trade routes in council space. Large sections of it were now marked in red, indicating routes that had been abandoned. The humans used to run most of these routes. They were willing to take risks, to try new approaches. Now everyone just sticks to the safest, most established paths. "Perhaps we should offer incentives," her supervisor suggested. "We've tried that. It doesn't work. The problem isn't money. It's mindset." Nari zoomed in on a struggling colony. This colony is only 50 light-years from a major trade hub, but no one wants to establish a route there because it would require navigating through an asteroid field. The humans would have found a way through it or around it within a month. Her supervisor sighed. "We are not humans. We do things properly, not recklessly." "There's a difference between reckless and adaptable," Nari said. But her supervisor had already walked away. The real crisis began on a cold morning in the Council's military headquarters. Commander Johann was reviewing the daily reports when an urgent message appeared on his screen. A colony in the Outer Rim had gone silent. All communication had stopped suddenly. Johann immediately dispatched a scout ship to investigate. 3 days later, he wished he hadn't. The scout ship's report was brief and terrifying. "Colony is gone. Planet has been harvested. All organic and inorganic material has been stripped away. Only the planetary core remains. Unknown vessel detected leaving the system. Cannot classify. Recommend immediate military response." Johann assembled the Council's defense fleet and headed to the site himself. What he found there made his blood run cold. The planet had been reduced to a lifeless ball of rock. Everything else was simply gone. The oceans, the atmosphere, the cities, even the soil, all of it had been removed with surgical precision. "What could do this?" his second-in-command asked. "I don't know," Johann admitted. "But we need to find out." They tracked the unknown vessel's trajectory and followed it. It led them to another system, where they found the vessel itself. It was massive, larger than any ship Johann had ever seen. It didn't match any known design. The hull was dark and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Johann tried to make contact. There was no response. He sent a warning that they would fire if the vessel didn't identify itself. Still no response. Finally, following standard protocol, he gave the order to fire a warning shot across the vessel's bow. The unknown vessel responded immediately. It fired back with weapons that cut through the Council ship's shields as if they weren't there. In less than 10 minutes, Johann lost a quarter of his fleet. He ordered a full retreat. Back at headquarters, the Council members listened to his report in stunned silence. They had encountered something they had no experience dealing with. Something that their ancient protocols didn't account for. "We'll send a larger fleet," one council member suggested. It won't matter, Johann said. This thing adapts. Every time we hit it with a weapon, it analyzed the attack and adjusted its defenses. By the end of the battle, our weapons were completely useless against it. Then what do we do? Another council member asked. No one had an answer. Over the next year, the entity they started calling the Devourer destroyed 12 more planets. Each time, the council sent their fleets. Each time, the fleets were defeated. The Devourer learned from every encounter, adapting its strategies and defenses. Suman was one of the youngest council diplomats. She had been born after humanity left and had only heard stories about them. During a private strategy session, she made a suggestion that shocked everyone in the room. What if we asked the humans for help? The older diplomats stared at her in disbelief. The humans? One of them said. We banished them 300 years ago. They probably hate us. Maybe, Suman said. But they were good at adapting. They were good at facing the unknown. These are exactly the qualities we need right now. We don't even know if they survived, another diplomat argued. They went into unexplored space. They could be extinct by now. Or they could be thriving, Suman countered. Either way, we need to find out. Because our current approach isn't working. The debate went on for hours. Some council members refused to even consider the idea. They saw it as admitting weakness. Others were simply too proud to ask humanity for help after banishing them. But as more planets fell to the Devourer, desperation began to set in. 30 planets gone. 50 planets. 70. The Devourer showed no signs of stopping, and the council seemed powerless to stop it. Taemin, the historian, was asked to brief the council on humanity. He compiled everything they knew. Their achievements, their methods, their last known location. They went beyond the outer rim, he told the assembled council, into the regions we considered too dangerous to explore. We have no data on what happened to them after that. If they're out there, Nari added during her own briefing. They've had 300 years to develop without our restrictions. They could be very different from the humans we remember. Johann stood before the council and said something he never thought he would say. Our military strategies are based on millions of years of tradition. The Devourer doesn't care about our traditions. It adapts faster than we do. If there's any chance the humans survived, any chance at all, we need to find them. The council leader, a different being than the one who had banished humanity, finally spoke. If we do this, we admit that we were wrong to exile them. We admit that we need them. Yes, Suman said firmly. We admit all of that. Because it's true. The vote was close, but eventually the decision was made. A small expedition would be sent to search for humanity. They would go into the dark space beyond the outer rim. They would find out what happened to the species they had thrown away, and they would beg for help from the people they had once judged as unworthy. As the expedition prepared to depart, Taemin stood in the archives one last time, looking at humanity's records. He read Admiral Jiho's final message. You'll regret this. We do. Taemin whispered to the empty room. We really do. Hyun had volunteered for the expedition immediately. Unlike most of his people, he remembered humans fondly. His species had been one of the few that had genuinely befriended humanity during their time in council space. When the banishment happened, Hyun had been young, but he remembered the sadness in his parents' voices when they talked about losing their human colleagues. Now, as an adult and a skilled navigator, he stood on the bridge of the exploration ship, staring at the star charts of the region beyond the outer rim. Most of the map was blank. The council had never explored this area. Why didn't we ever come out here? Asked Sora, his second in command. Fear, Hyun said simply. This region has unstable stars, strange gravitational anomalies, radiation fields that can destroy ships. The council decided long ago it wasn't worth the risk. But the humans came here anyway. They didn't have a choice. We forced them to come here or die. The expedition ship crossed into the unexplored region. Immediately, alarms began sounding. The radiation levels were higher than expected. Hyun adjusted their shields and continued forward. 3 weeks into the journey, they found the first sign of human presence. It was a small, automated beacon, ancient by council standards, but still functioning. The message it broadcast was simple. Border marker. Earth Systems Alliance. Proceed with caution. Earth Systems Alliance? Sora said. They formed their own government? Of course they did, Hyun replied. What else would they do? They followed the beacon's signal deeper into human territory. What they found shocked them beyond words. The first human outpost they encountered wasn't a struggling colony. It was a thriving city built on an asteroid. The structures were elegant and efficient, using materials and designs the Council had never seen before. How is this possible? Sora whispered. They adapted, Hyun said. Without the Council's restrictions, they were free to innovate. As they approached the outpost, several human ships intercepted them. They were small, fast, and their weapons were unlike anything in the Council database. The human ships surrounded the expedition ship with practiced efficiency. A communication channel opened. A face appeared on the screen, a human male with sharp eyes and a cautious expression. This is Commander Minho of the Earth Systems Alliance. You are in sovereign human territory. State your purpose. Hyun stepped forward. My name is Hyun. I represent the Galactic Council. We come in peace, seeking to speak with your leadership. Minho's expression didn't change. The Council? The same council that banished us 300 years ago? Yes, Hyun admitted. We know our history with your people is complicated. That's one word for it. Minho was quiet for a moment, then said, Follow my ships. Don't deviate from the course. Any unexpected movement will be considered hostile. The human escort led them deeper into their territory. Hyun and his crew watched in amazement as they passed world after world. Each planet was inhabited. Each station was bustling with activity. They saw massive ships, larger than anything the Council had built. They saw orbital platforms that could only be described as megastructures. How many worlds do they have? Sora asked, pulling up a scanner reading. I'm detecting human presence on over 2,000 planets in this region alone, one of the crew members reported. And this might just be one sector of their territory. Sora turned to Hyun. In 300 years, they built all of this? Without the Council telling them what they couldn't do, Hyun said quietly. They built what they wanted to do. They arrived at what appeared to be a diplomatic station. It was neutral ground, Minho explained, where humans met with other species they had encountered in the unexplored regions. The station was beautiful, combining functionality with aesthetics in a way that showed the human love for both efficiency and art. Commander Minho escorted them to a meeting room. The room was designed to accommodate various species, with adjustable atmosphere and gravity controls. Minho gestured for them to sit. Before we go any further, Minho said, I need to know why you're here. The Council made it very clear we weren't welcome. So why show up now? I look hated, Hyun decided to be honest. We're dying. There's a threat we can't defeat. Something called the Devourer. It's destroying our worlds, and none of our weapons or strategies work against it. And you want our help? Minho said flatly. Yes. Minho leaned back in his chair. Let me tell you what happened after you kicked us out. We lost thousands of people during the Exodus. Ships broke down in uncharted space. Colonies failed because we didn't have the resources we needed. Children died because we didn't have access to Council medical supplies. Hyun felt shame wash over him. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring them back. Minho's voice was hard. But you want to know what else happened? We learned. We adapted. We became stronger. We discovered that all those restrictions the Council placed on us weren't for safety. They were to keep us in our place. I believe you, Hyun said. I've seen your cities, your ships. You've surpassed us in many ways. In every way, Minho corrected. We don't mean to boast. But it's the truth. We had to become better to survive out here. Sora spoke up for the first time. Then why shouldn't you just let us face the Devourer alone? Why help the people who hurt you? Minho looked at her with something like respect. That's a fair question. The truth is, I don't have the authority to answer it. I'm just a commander. This decision goes higher than me. Then who do we need to speak with? Hyun asked. I've already sent a message to our leadership. They're reviewing the situation. In the meantime, you're free to stay on this station. Consider yourselves guests, not prisoners. Over the next 3 days, Hyun and his crew explored the station. They met humans from all walks of life, scientists, traders, soldiers, families. What struck Hyun most was how confident they all seemed. They weren't angry or bitter about the banishment. If anything, they seemed grateful for it. One evening, Hyun sat in the station's observation deck with a human scientist named Hae-jin. She was studying the data his crew had collected about the Devourer. This is fascinating, Hae-jin said, reviewing the scans. It's an adaptive machine intelligence. Very advanced. We can't stop it, Hyun admitted. Every strategy we try, it learns and counters. That's because you're thinking like the Council, Hae-jin said. You're trying to defeat it with established military doctrine. But this thing doesn't follow anyone's doctrine. It's pure adaptation. What would humans do differently? Hae-jin smiled. We'd adapt faster. We'd do things it wouldn't expect. We'd break our own rules if we had to. The Council doesn't break rules, Hyun said. I know. That's why you're losing. On the 4th day, Minho returned. Your request has been reviewed by Admiral Eunji. She's willing to meet with you. Will she help us? Hyun asked. I don't know, Minho said honestly. The Admiral has her own mind. But I will tell you this, she's the granddaughter of Admiral Jiho, the man who led our people out of Council space. She carries his legacy. The meeting with Admiral Eunji took place in a larger conference room. She was a woman in her 60s, with gray hair and eyes that seemed to look right through Hyun. She studied the Council delegation for a long moment before speaking. I've read your reports about the Devourer, she said. I've also read about the Council's response to it. 70 planets destroyed. And you're still using the same tactics. Why? 7. Because they're proven tactics, Sora said. They've worked for millions of years. Against enemies who think like you, Eunji replied. This enemy doesn't. Tell me, in 300 years, how many times has the Council faced something truly new? Something that didn't fit your understanding of how things should work? Hyun thought about it. Not often. Maybe never. See, exactly. You've been comfortable for so long that you've forgotten how to handle real challenges. Eunji stood and walked to a window showing the stars. My grandfather knew this would happen. He wrote in his journal that the Council would eventually face something they couldn't handle with their old ways. He predicted you'd come looking for us. What else did he say? Hyun asked. Eunji turned back to them. He said that, when you came, we should remember that we're human. And being human means we don't abandon people. Even people who abandoned us. Hyun felt a surge of hope. Then you'll help? I didn't say that. Eunji sat back down. I said we're human. But we're also not stupid. If we help you, things have to change. The Council can't go back to the way things were. What do you mean? I mean you need to learn. You need to grow. You need to stop being afraid of change. Eunji looked at each Council member. If we save you, and then you go back to your comfortable, stagnant ways, then what was the point? The next crisis will just destroy you anyway. So what do you want from us? Hyun asked. Eunji smiled slightly. That's a good question. Let's talk about it. The full Council delegation arrived 2 weeks later. They came in a diplomatic ship that looked ancient compared to human vessels. Leading them was Ji-won, the former ambassador who had cast the vote to banish humanity all those years ago. She was old now, near the end of her long lifespan. But she insisted on being part of this mission. Hyun met her at the docking bay. Ambassador Ji-won, welcome to. I'm not an ambassador anymore. She interrupted. I retired decades ago. But when I heard about this mission, I knew I had to come. I owe humanity that much. You voted to exile them, Hyun said carefully. I did, and I've regretted it every day since. Ji-won looked around the station with wonder. They've done well for themselves, haven't they? Better than well. They've thrived. The negotiations began the next morning. The council delegation sat on one side of a large table. On the other side sat Admiral Eunji and her team, including Commander Minho and a cultural liaison named Yuna. Yuna's job was to observe the council members and determine if their request was genuine or desperate. The council leader opened the discussion. We come before you in humility. We acknowledge that we made a grave mistake 300 years ago. We seek to make amends and ask for your assistance in our time of crisis. Eunji listened without expression. You banished us because we were too different, too chaotic, too unpredictable. Have we become less different? Less chaotic? Less unpredictable? No, the council leader admitted. If anything, you've become more so. But we now understand that these qualities aren't flaws. They're strengths. It took the deaths of millions for you to realize that, Minho said, his voice sharp. Ji-won spoke up. You're right. We were foolish and arrogant. We thought our ancient wisdom made us superior. We couldn't see that wisdom without growth is just stagnation dressed up in fancy words. Yuna watched Ji-won carefully. The old council member's regret seemed genuine. But was regret enough? Sok-jin, a council scientist, added his voice. I've spent the past month studying your technology. With your permission, what you've achieved is remarkable. You've combined artificial intelligence, biological engineering, and quantum mechanics in ways we never imagined. Not because we couldn't, but because we were afraid to try. Fear is a powerful motivator, Eunji said. Fear of change kept you safe for a long time. But eventually, the universe throws something at you that you can't handle with old solutions. The Devourer, the council leader said. The Devourer is just a symptom, Eunji replied. The real problem is that you've been coasting on achievements that are millions of years old. You've been living off the work of your ancestors, instead of creating your own legacy. The room fell silent. It was a harsh truth, but no one could deny it. Sora, speaking for the first time, asked, What would you have us do differently? Everything, Eunji said. Your education system teaches people to memorize old knowledge, not create new knowledge. Your government rewards those who follow tradition, not those who innovate. Your military trains soldiers to execute established strategies, not to think creatively in battle. You're describing a complete transformation of our society, the council leader said. Yes, Eunji agreed. Because anything less won't be enough. You can't just patch a few holes and call it fixed. The whole foundation needs to change. Ji-won leaned forward. If we agree to these changes, will you help us? Eunji was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she said, I want to show you something. Anmanli. Anmanli. Lan. Anmanli. She activated a holographic display in the center of the table. It showed an old journal entry, handwritten in Korean, but translated for the council members. The handwriting was shaky but clear. This is from my grandfather's journal, Eunji explained. He wrote it on the day of the banishment. Let me read it to you. She began. Today, the council threw us away like broken tools. They think we're the problem. But they're wrong. They're comfortable. And comfort is the enemy of growth. One day, they'll face something their ancient strategies can't defeat. When that day comes, they'll remember us. They'll come looking for us. And when they do, I hope my descendants will be wise enough to help them, not out of obligation, but because it's the right thing to do. Because that's what makes us human. The council members listened in silence. Eunji closed the display. My grandfather knew you'd come. He also knew what humanity's response should be. But he left the final decision to me. My final decision to me. And what is your decision? Ji-won asked. I have conditions, Eunji said. Not payment or territory. Real conditions about how things will work going forward. We're listening. First, The Council must issue a formal apology, not just to humanity, but to any species you've ever dismissed or looked down on because they didn't fit your standards. That apology must be public and sincere. The Council leader nodded slowly. Agreed. Second, the Council must create a new charter. One that values innovation as much as tradition. One that encourages species to develop in their own ways, instead of forcing them to conform. That's a major change, Sora said. It will take time. Start with a commitment, Unji said. Show the galaxy you mean it. Sokjin spoke. What else? Third, if humanity helps you defeat the Devourer, we don't become subordinates again. We become equal partners. No species holds authority over another. No ancient hierarchy. True cooperation. Some council members won't like that, the council leader said. Then they can stay behind while the rest of you move forward, Unji replied bluntly. I'm not interested in preserving the feelings of those who refuse to change. Yuna, who had been watching quietly, finally spoke. Admiral, may I ask a question? Of course. Why are you helping them at all? After what they did to our ancestors, you'd be justified in refusing. No one would blame you. Unji smiled at the younger woman. Because my grandfather was right. Being human means we don't abandon people, even people who hurt us. But more than that, it means we believe in growth. If the Council can change, really change, then that makes the galaxy a better place for everyone. She turned back to the Council delegation. But understand this. I won't send human soldiers to die, just so you can go back to your comfortable ways. If we do this, it's all the way. Complete transformation, or nothing. Jiwan stood up. She moved to the center of the room, in full view of everyone. Then, slowly, she bowed deeply. In her culture, this was a gesture of profound respect and humility. On behalf of the Galactic Council, she said, I apologize. We were wrong to banish humanity. We were wrong to fear change. We were wrong to think our way was the only way. If you help us, I give you my word that things will be different. One by one, the other council members stood and bowed as well. Even Sora, who had been skeptical, followed suit. Unji watched them for a moment, then nodded. All right. We'll help you. Relief flooded the room. Hyun felt tears in his eyes. They had succeeded. But, Yoonji continued, we're not just sending our military. We're sending teachers, scientists, engineers. They'll work alongside your people. They'll show you how we do things. You'll learn by doing, not by reading about it in old texts. We accept, the council leader said. One more thing, Minho added. This isn't us saving you. This is us fighting together. Your people need to be on the front lines too. You can't just sit back and watch. We understand, Sokjin said. We're ready to fight. Over the next few days, the details were worked out. Human ships would join the Council fleet. Human commanders would work with Council commanders. Human scientists would share their technology, but the Council would have to learn how to use it themselves. Yuna found Hyun on the observation deck one evening. You did well, she told him. We didn't do anything, Hyun said. Your people made the choice to help. You came here with humility, Yuna said. You admitted your mistakes. That matters. Will it be enough? That depends on what the Council does next. If they really change, then yes. If they just pretend to change until the crisis is over, then no. Hyun looked out at the stars. I think we'll change. We have to. The old ways almost destroyed us. Then there's hope, Yuna said. The joint Human Council fleet began assembling. It would take another month to prepare. But when it launched, it would be the largest combined force the galaxy had ever seen. And for the first time in 300 years, humans would fight side by side with the Council. Not as servants or subordinates, but as equals. Fleet Admiral Daehyun stood on the bridge of the flagship Resilience, named after the quality that defined humanity's 300 years in exile. He was the fifth generation to bear the name Daehyun. A tradition started to honor the captain who had stood beside Admiral Jiho during the banishment. This Daehyun commanded the combined Human Council fleet, the largest military force assembled in recorded history. Next to him was Commander Johann of the Council forces. The same Johann who had lost so many ships to the Devourer. He looked older now, tired from years of fighting a losing battle. "Ready?" Daehyun asked. "As ready as we'll ever be," Johann replied. "Your tactical approach is unconventional." Daehyun smiled. "That's the point. The Devourer expects conventional. We're going to give it chaos." The fleet approached the latest system under attack. The Devourer was already there, its massive dark hull absorbing the light from the nearby star. It was in the process of harvesting a planet, breaking it down into component materials. "All ships, this is Daehyun. Remember the plan. Do not engage in predictable patterns. Trust your instincts. Adapt to what you see, not what you expect. Begin the attack." The human ships moved first, breaking into small groups that attacked from multiple angles simultaneously. They didn't follow standard formation flying. Each group moved independently, creating a chaotic pattern that was impossible to predict. The Council ships, trained for millions of years in proper formation tactics, struggled at first. But they followed the human lead, breaking their own formations and adapting to the fluid style of combat. The Devourer responded with its usual efficiency, analyzing the attacks and adjusting its defenses. But something was different this time. The attack patterns kept changing. Every time the Devourer adapted to one approach, the ship switched to another. Pilot Minji flew her fighter through the Devourer's weapon fire with a skill that came from pure instinct. She had trained in the asteroid fields of human space, where rigid tactics would get you killed. Now she used those same skills, weaving and dodging in ways that no computer could predict. "Can't hit what you can't calculate," she muttered, then fired a burst at the Devourer's sensor array. Council pilots watched in amazement. One of them, trying to copy her technique, almost succeeded before reverting to his training. But it was a start. On the Resilience, scientist Hana worked alongside Council researchers. She was the granddaughter of the original Hana, who had watched the banishment from the observation deck. Now she studied the Devourer's adaptive algorithms in real time. "It's learning from each attack," she told the group. "But there's a delay. About 3 seconds between analysis and adaptation." 3 seconds is nothing," a Council scientist said. "It's everything," Hana replied. "If we can hit it with something completely new every 3 seconds, it can't keep up. But we need to coordinate." She opened a channel to all ships, all science vessels. "Send me your current weapons configurations. We're going to create a rotation schedule. Each ship fires a different weapon type in sequence. The Devourer won't have time to adapt before the next different attack hits." It was improvisation on a massive scale. The Council had never tried such a thing before. But they had no choice, except to trust the humans. The coordinated attack began. The Devourer's defenses started to fail. Small breaches appeared in its hull. For the first time since it arrived, the Devourer seemed uncertain, but it adapted again, faster this time. It changed its entire defensive strategy, shifting from reactive barriers to predictive shielding. It was learning not just from individual attacks, but from the pattern of changes. "It's evolving faster than expected," Johann said, worry in his voice. Daehyun studied the tactical display. "Then we evolve faster. All ships, abandon the rotation schedule. Pure chaos from here on. Every ship attacks however they want, whenever they want. No coordination at all. That's madness," a Council commander protested. "Exactly," Daehyun said. "It's madness to us, so it'll be madness to the Devourer too." What followed was the most disorganized, chaotic battle in military history. And it worked. The Devourer's algorithms couldn't find any pattern to predict because there was no pattern. It was pure creative chaos, ships attacking based on individual judgment and instinct. But the battle was far from over. The Devourer might not be able to predict the attacks, but it was still incredibly powerful. Ships were lost on both sides. Council members and humans died together, fighting the same enemy. Commander Taeyang, a tactical genius from the human fleet, noticed something. The Devourer keeps returning to the same position relative to the star. It's not random. It needs that position for something. He ran calculations and realized the truth. It's drawing power from the star itself. That's how it repairs damage so quickly. We need to cut off that connection. How? Daehyun asked. We place a disruption field between it and the star, but it would require a ship to hold position in the Devourer's direct line of fire. It would be difficult. Difficult or suicidal? Johan asked. Both, Taeyang admitted. Minji's voice came over the comm. I'll do it. My fighter is fast enough to dodge its weapons, long enough to deploy the field. Minji, that's... Daehyun started to protest. The only option, she finished. I know. It's okay, Admiral. This is what I trained for. What happened next would be remembered in both human and council history. Minji's fighter dove through impossible fire, moving with a grace that seemed to defy physics. She dodged, spun, and weaved through attacks that should have destroyed her a dozen times over. Council pilots watched in awe. Is that even possible? One of them asked. For humans, apparently. Another replied. Minji reached the position and deployed the disruption field. Immediately, the Devourer's repair rate dropped. The damage being inflicted by the fleet started to accumulate, but the Devourer focused all its weapons on Minji's fighter. She dodged the first barrage, and the second. The third clipped her wing, sending her into a spin. The fourth hit directly. Her last transmission was calm. Field is holding. Finish it. The entire fleet, human and council alike, attacked with everything they had. The Devourer, cut off from the star's energy and overwhelmed by the sustained assault, began to break apart. Its central processor core was exposed. Daehyun gave the order, and a combined human council strike force destroyed it. The Devourer went silent. Its pieces drifted in space, no longer a threat. The fleet erupted in celebration. Humans and council members who had been strangers a month ago now embraced as comrades. They had won together, but the victory was bittersweet. Hundreds of ships had been lost, thousands of lives. Minji was given full military honors by both the human and council forces. In the aftermath, the fleet returned to council space. What they found was a civilization already beginning to change. News of the victory had spread quickly. More importantly, news of how the victory was achieved had spread too. Council schools started teaching innovation alongside tradition. Engineers began proposing new designs instead of copying old ones. Young council members talked excitedly about human methods and thinking. 3 months after the battle, a ceremony was held at Station Unity Prime, rebuilt after the Devourer had damaged it. Ambassador Yoonji stood beside Council leader Seokjin as they signed the new Galactic Alliance Charter. Hyun, now officially a liaison between human and council governments, watched from the audience. Next to him was Yuna, who had become his close friend during the campaign. Do you think it will last? Hyun asked quietly. The alliance? Or the change in thinking? Both, Yuna considered. The alliance will last because it has to. We've seen what happens when species isolate themselves. As for the change in thinking, that's harder. Change is uncomfortable. Some will want to go back to the old ways, but enough will move forward, Hyun said. I've seen it in my own people. We're excited about the future, in a way we haven't been in millennia. On the stage, Seokjin spoke to the assembled delegates from dozens of species. For millions of years, the council believed that order and tradition were the highest values. We were wrong. The highest value is growth, the courage to change, the wisdom to learn from those who think differently than us. Yoonji added, humanity doesn't have all the answers. We're chaotic and imperfect. But we've learned that imperfection is where innovation lives. Mistakes are where learning happens. Change is where growth begins. Jiwon, the old council member, sat in the front row. She was crying, but they were tears of relief. She had lived long enough to see her mistake corrected, long enough to see a better galaxy emerge. Taemin, the historian, was already writing the new chapter in the Galactic Archives. He titled it, The Age of Renewal. In his introduction, he wrote, "Sometimes the greatest gift is rejection. When the Council banished humanity, we thought we were protecting ourselves. Instead, we freed them to become something greater. And when they returned, they brought that greatness back to share with us. Sokjin and Unji stood together, looking out at the stars through the station's massive windows. Your grandfather said we would regret banishing humanity, Sokjin said. He was right. But you learned from it, Unji replied. That's what matters. My grandfather also believed that any species capable of learning could grow. The Council proved him right too. What happens now? Unji smiled. Now we explore together. We build together. We face whatever comes next. Together. Not as Council and humans, but as equals. Far beyond the borders of the new alliance, in the unexplored depths of space, other threats waited. Other challenges that would test the combined strength of the galaxy's species, but for the first time in millions of years, the galaxy was ready for them, because they had learned the lesson that humanity had tried to teach 300 years ago. Diversity is not weakness. It is strength. Change is not danger. It is opportunity. And the chaos of new ideas is not something to fear, but something to embrace. The Council had banished humanity to protect their comfortable order. Humanity returned not for revenge, but to share the lesson they had learned in exile, that survival belongs not to the strongest or the oldest, but to those willing to adapt. And together, they would adapt to whatever the universe threw at them. The age of stagnation was over. The age of growth had begun.